Hello, we are here today to talk about wall beds because we sell a lot of wall beds and we get a lot of questions about wall beds. There are so many different types of wall beds and the price range is really uh, big. There is wall beds that you can buy for maybe 10,000 Swedish krona, which is about 1,000 euros or something, and then some wall beds they can go over 100,000 Swedish krona, which is about 10,000 euros. So of course there is a lot of big difference when it comes to wall beds, and it comes in so many different shapes and sizes. So I really wanted just to go through the different types and why you should pay less for some wall beds and why it actually could be a good idea to pay a little bit more to get a different type of wall bed than what you maybe what you were thinking about. So just for starters, when it comes to the price differences of the different wall beds, one of the most important things when it comes to wall beds is that some wall beds, they come assembled in one big piece. And that can be a very big advantage if you have an apartment or a house where it's easy to fit it in. Then it comes assembled. All you have to do is to fasten it to the wall and everything is done. Perfect. But a lot of people don't live like that. We live on the second floor or even 6 floors up, and we have a very small elevator and so on, and we can't get a wall bed like that in. Of course, then you need to buy it in parts and assemble it in the apartment. But with that said, that can be very big difference in time to assemble the wall bed. Some wall beds can actually take up to more than a day for 2 persons to put together. As you can see, some of the budget wall beds, and that's, I think, most of the time the main reason why they are so much cheaper than the other wall beds, because they need to be assembled piece by piece. And if you look at some of the really budget version wall beds, they actually we made a film here about one of the wall beds that we have here on our webpage, and that film is about 23 minutes long, and it's only going through the main parts of how to put it together. And I've seen some of the other my competitors' movies where they have done for the assembly of wall beds, and it's flying parts all the time, and it's up to 36 minutes long. And of course, if you never assembled a wall bed before, you quite easily understand that it would take you a long time to assemble a wall bed. And I have had customers that have spent weeks trying to put wall beds together and they've given up. So you have to really take into account, if you buy a good budget wall bed that actually is possible to assemble, then you can expect 5 hours for 2 people that have assembled things before to know to assemble furnitures and things. So 5 hours for 2 people, which means 10 people altogether. 10 hours altogether for 2 people. And of course, you know what a handyman costs. So if you can't do it yourself and you need to bring in a handyman that can assemble these things, it's an extra cost. So if you pay maybe 3, 4, 5, 6,000 extra for another wall bed, which comes in big parts, you just need to put the big parts together, which you can actually simply do yourself, or a handyman can do in 1 hour. Then of course it will be much cheaper for you in the end. So you have to look on the whole picture. But of course also, like I started with, you have to see where you're going to get the wall bed in. Do you have a big elevator where you can put the wall bed in so it fits all the way? So most of the time we always ask our customers when they buy something from us in the shop for the measurements of the elevator, if they're going to have it into a lift, to be able to take it into the apartment. So all these things are important, and it could be just 3 small steps on the way up to your apartment. That because if you buy an assembled wall bed which weighs 240 kilos, everything I say over 120, 140 centimeters in bed width weighs over 200 kilos, and to lift that just over 3 small steps, it takes 4 grown men to be able to do that. So you have to take those things into account. Otherwise, of course, you should buy if you can't fix that, then you need to buy another wall bed, which actually comes in big parts, or a budget version that comes in very, very many parts. But then, of course, you have to also make sure that you can get the assembly done. Because I have met a lot of customers that have bought budget wall beds in the past that just can't get them together, because it's quite a lot of assembly. So if you ever had any problems with assembling any kind of unassembled furnitures before, then don't even think about assembling a budget wall bed, because you just won't be able to get it together. So that's it for the status of which kind of wall bed you should have, why budget and so on. But then of course there is also other differences, and I will go through the different types of steps why some wall beds are different than others. But for the main part, I think, is the first part, the assembly part, which makes the difference in the price. But of course there is also quality difference in different materials that you choose. Now for another thing that I want to talk about is the mattress, or the type of bed you're gonna have in your wall bed. And there is a lot of different types of beds out there, and in Sweden we have a tradition of using a bed that normally looks like this, where you have a wooden slat in the bottom of the bed frame like this. So this is what we used to normally have in Sweden, where you just screw the legs in the bottom of the bed and use it as it is. But for a wall bed, I think this is not a very good option, because as you see here in the bottom of the bed frame, you have a lot of air. Doesn't fill any kind of function in a wall bed. It looks very good if you want to buy a bed in a furniture shop. It looks very thick and nice, and of course they want to make it as thick as possible, because then you think you get more for your money. But what you get in the end is just you get more air in the wall bed, and it doesn't really fill any function in the wall bed at all, because the wall bed has its own frame and it bears its own the weight by itself. So this extra frame here doesn't really do anything. But of course some people, they have bought expensive special mattresses and so on, and they want to be able to use their old bed in the wall bed. And of course you can get a wall bed that is suited for this type of bed as well, as we normally have in Sweden. But most of the time my recommendation is, if you're gonna buy a wall bed, if you wanted to be able to fit as much of things in the wall bed as possible, like cushions and bed linens and so on, you want to have as much space as possible in the wall bed, choose a different type of spring mattress, because you have exactly the same spring system. You have pocket spring, is normal, most common one, I think, in Sweden, one that we use the most. But you can have all different types of mattresses, so there's no difference. You don't get a bad mattress just because you don't have a traditional Swedish mattress, because we Swedish people, we are just as all other European people. We are very traditional and want it like we always had it. But you get the same type of spring system. You can still choose if you want a hard, firm mattress or a soft mattress and so on. So don't worry about that. And there is also some advantages with having a loose mattress, more than just the space you get extra in the wall bed. And I will show you that later on. But here you have a pocket spring mattress from German Neil, for example. So that's what I would recommend, to have a loose mattress in the wall bed, no matter what type of wall bed you choose. The ones we make that are suitable for both Swedish traditional frame bed and this one, you can always choose which kind of bed you want inside, and then that's prepared before you get the wall bed, of course, for the mattress that you're going to have in the wall bed. So that's one thing to think about when you choose your wall bed. So I want to take a few minutes to talk about different materials that you can have your wall bed made of. This is from a budget wall bed, and that's I think when it comes to the materials that the wall bed are made of, this is one of the most important thing for the price, which makes it more expensive or cheaper. Because of course, if you have a veneered or you have solid wood or something like that, then that is much more expensive than if you have a cheap chipboard like this one, where you have a very thin melamine on top. And there is of course different types. There's melamine, laminate, or just plastic foil that they put on. And I think in the very cheapest version, many parts, that's just thin plastic foil. And you can actually see here how the edging of the chipboard is. And I think actually in some of the, we don't sell them because they are too cheap for my liking, I think. But for some of our competitors, they sell them and they don't even use edging anymore. They just fold the cheap plastic over the edges, so you get a really bad product in the end. And I think that's not even suitable, because if you have a wall bed, that should actually be quite durable if you're going to be able to use it, of course, because you have a bed in it that you do fold up every single day. So of course it needs to be done in a durable material. So, but still, if you buy a budget version, the material is much thinner and it will not last as much as, for example, if you use a material that we like to use a lot in the wall beds that we make ourselves here in Sweden, which is this, where you have a veneer on the sides. In this case it's actually beech, but you can have it most of the time it's in pine. You can get it in a lot of different types of wood, so it's different, but it's quite durable, because you have to have solid wood in the middle, which is glued together in pieces. So it's a very solid material, but it's actually quite light in weight, because as you have this one where you have a chipboard, that is actually quite heavy. So if you have a wall bed which is over 120, I think you need to be a lot of people to be able to move it and so on. But if we make it in this year, normally the ones that we make here in Sweden, you can choose how you want it delivered, but normally we deliver it in two pieces. So you have the actual wall bed in one piece, the cabinet in one piece, and then you have the front in one piece. And actually I can lift myself a 140 cabinet made in this material. So it's much lighter but still stronger materials. But of course you can get a lot of different types and versions, and different companies make different wall beds. We also sell very good wall beds from German Neil, for example, which also have thicker materials in them. But of course then they use a very thick material, so you have the quality and the durability of the wall bed and so on. So you can actually use it a lot, because that's what you need when you make a wall bed. So, and there's a lot of different types of wall beds. We also make wall beds with this board here, which is colored all the way through, so you can actually make scratches in it and so on, and just take a fine sandpaper and just remove them again. So there's a lot of different versions, but that's also something, of course, that affects the cost of the wall bed when you choose your wall bed. So I want to talk about another thing that actually do affect the price of the wall bed, and that's the actual mechanism you have in the wall bed. And also this is something that should affect the choices that you make when you buy a wall bed, because this is important. If, and I think I say if, but I think most people, they will have to change this after a while, because sometimes maybe you want to change to another bed or another mattress, so you put an extra topper in the wall bed, or maybe you change your partner in life and you have a more heavy partner than you had before, and then you actually need to change the force of the mechanism that you have in the wall bed. So that can actually be needed to be changed afterwards, and most of the time it actually is needed. And for the budget versions, like I said, most of the time they have this kind of mechanical springs. And when you change the mechanical springs, or if you add or remove mechanical springs, you have to remove the front of the wall bed, which actually for many of the budget wall beds are very, very heavy and difficult to do. Most of the time it takes 2 people to do it, and it's quite many screws and things, and you also have the risk that you actually do damage the wall bed when you do this. So it's a quite annoying thing to do, but it needs to be done. So expect that when you buy a wall bed, a budget version, that you need to change the springs after a while, and then you need to lift the front over. Of course, it is nothing that is impossible, but you should actually think about that as well. Because if you buy the more expensive wall beds that we sell, and also the ones that I've seen in other markets, they use gas springs, which are so much easier to change. If you want to change them afterwards, you just loosen 2 screws and put a new gas spring in there, and job is done. You don't have to lift the whole front off, the wall bed off. So it's a much easier thing to do, and that's also something that affects the price. I think most of the expensive, I shouldn't say expensive, but the better wall beds, they have gas springs inside of them. That's also the gas springs that we use for the ones that we produce here locally in Sweden. Of course, there is a little shortcut that you can use when you want to change the weight of your wall bed, but then again it can actually be a problem with the budget versions of wall beds, because they are not, like I showed you before, they are made of materials that are so bad that they are not they can't take the weight of this. But if you have a more expensive a wall bed, or a better quality wall bed where you have a thick material in it, you can actually put extra weights into the front of the wall bed, so you actually can put more weight into it if needed, because sometimes that is needed, so you can actually adjust it afterwards, so you don't have the effect that the door is closing when you go to the toilet at night or something like that. So you can actually do some adjustments afterwards. So here we have an open wall bed with a loose mattress, where you have these slats inside of the wall bed. So voila, here you see you have the wooden slats inside already, which actually makes the whole thing a little bit slimmer, so you can actually fit more bed linens and so on into the wall bed when you have a loose mattress like this one. So as you see here now, in the bottom we have a wall bed where you have no bottom frame, because this one is made for a Swedish traditional frame bed, which has its own wooden frame, as you can see in here. And I want to show you something interesting. Here you see the wooden frame, and then you see the wooden slats up there, and in between you actually have, this one is almost, I'd say, 1.5 decimeter thick, so it's just full of air, and this one will take up a lot of space in your wall bed. So here we have what we normally call an Ergoflex bottom, which it's actually adjustable in the bottom of the bed frame. So if you move these plastics inwards like this, the slats actually get to be a little bit softer. Here, as you see, it can flex a bit, and if you move that back out like that, it gets to be more stiff. It's not as flexible anymore, so you get a softer or a harder frame in the bottom of your wall bed when you have an Ergoflex bottom. And you actually see here also it's a little flexible in itself, so you get that when you have Ergoflex bottom in the wall bed, so you can adjust the frame. Also, if you want a harder or a softer bed, you don't have to change the whole frame bed as you have to do when you have a Swedish traditional frame bed.